All right, welcome back to just another solar podcast, the first one of 2024 with Luke Beattie. That's me, Karl Jensen. G'day, Karl.
Hey, g'day, Luke.
And Nigel Morris.
G'day, mate.
Hey, how was the holidays, guys?
Not long enough.
Mine was long enough.
You had a holiday?
I had a bloody beaut holiday. I always make sure that I take one big break over Christmas. So, sorry, Karl, I had a bloody cracker. I didn't go too far and just spent a lot of time with the phone off and the computer off and really tried to recharge the batteries. Back this week, going through the 7 stages of grief, depression, acceptance, anger, denial, shock. But by Thursday, the mojo was back, so I'm back.
I made it through a couple of days. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Nusa Lembongan, which is like a tropical paradise. All the weight of the world was off my shoulders. I had a clear head. Came back to work on the Monday, positive, feeling great. Tuesday, positive, not a care in the world. And by Wednesday, it hit me. It's like, oh, shit, this is what I do.
It's amazing how quick you get back in the groove, though. Hey?
It's true. It's actually great to be back.
Yeah.
It's been interesting for me for work the first week back because all of the iStore customers that, you're calling up saying, hey, now that you're back, what's going on? How do we see this year? Except they were all still on holiday because they made too much money last year, clearly.
A lot of people I talked to actually said a lot of their teams took a little bit longer this year, and there seems to be a vibe out there that a lot of families and everyone took as much leave as they could this year after sort of last year being the first real year back after COVID. So I think everyone was busting for a good break.
Anyway, there's been heaps of news and we're certainly not going to cover it all off. So we've just picked out a couple of interesting points. Now, one I saw was on the ABC this week, and they're forecasting that the cost of batteries is going to go down by 40% by 2025. That's next year.
Yeah, interesting. I saw another one on the electric biking. That's a YouTube channel, guys, Sam Evans out of Sydney. And he did an episode a number of months ago where he said that the cell cost was $85 a kilowatt hour now. And the pack cost was $100 a kilowatt hour. And that table that you sent through from the ABC says that we haven't even got to $140. So I reckon that 40% drop in cell cost has already happened. And it's interesting that it also said that the cost of a battery in an electric car represented half of the cost of the vehicle. I don't think that's even remotely the case now. I think if you're building it for $100 or even $140 US and your car's got 75 kilowatt hours, then it's 10 grand and these things are fucking 85, so the battery's insignificant.
I don't know if it's insignificant, Karl. I'll probably disagree with you there, but I do agree that it's certainly becoming less and less significant. This is a really interesting one because, I dug in really deep today when you sent that through, Luke, and went, what's going on here? And why is this the case? And, clearly it's mostly driven by supply and demand, right? Because all these resources, all these mines have come online and supply exceeds demand for lithium now. So, that's forced the lithium price down, which is good for consumers and is bad for miners. And it was some really interesting stories actually about Gina Reinhardt, who stopped a massive buyout of a big lithium mine over in WA recently by a US company who's the biggest lithium miner in the world. But 2 things struck me out of that. Number one, the other thing actually that's worth mentioning is that the other thing that's happening is that all the rebates have come off, right? In the biggest markets, China and Germany had huge EV rebates, and they've now turned off. Germany's got a fiscal problem, they've got a budget problem, so they've said we can't afford rebates, so they turned them off. China's doing its thing and saying, well, the market's, booming along quite nicely now. We've got really high uptake of EV, so we don't need a rebate anymore. Off you go. So, there's really interesting dynamics at play which have this effect of kind of artificially pushing the price down through these supply and demand issues, which is going to be great for us as buyers, whether it's EVs or whether it's, stationary batteries over the next 1 to 2 years. And then the forecast, of course, all the miners want the price to go back up because that's good for them. But of course, then all the manufacturers will be at higher scale, theoretically, if demand keeps growing. So, then the price of EVs and stationary batteries will stay low, potentially, because everything else is fallen into balance. So yes, we're in for a really interesting couple of years. The other thing that I picked up on, and I haven't looked at lithium for ages, but lithium comes from two sources, right? It comes from brine, and it comes from a crystal rock called spodumene. And Australia is very, very rich in spodumene, mostly in the West. And it's also very rich in high purity spodumene. And I kind of kicked myself because, I don't know, 15 years ago, my next door neighbor was a geologist. And he knew I was in solar. We got talking, blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah, I'm all about spodumene. That's where the world's going to be at in, 5 or 10 years' time. I didn't know what he was talking about and was trying to get my head around it and didn't buy any shares. And, I'd be I'd be a millionaire now if I'd bought spodumene shares. But we're swimming in high-grade spodumene, which is really, really good. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years. I'm with you. I think we're in for a couple of good years on pricing, but I don't know that it's real yet. We've got to get scale to come in on the back of these artificially low prices to keep it that low. Otherwise, we're going to see it jump back up.
You can look at the comparison to solar panels. So the production capacity of solar panels, which was maybe going back 10 years, 10 gigawatts globally. That's a thumb in the air. I don't have the exact number. Whereas now, they're talking about pushing towards a terawatt. Very soon. So what's happened with the price of solar panels is that feedback from manufacturers is that they increase the production capacity, and then they're absolutely flying out the door. But it's not viable to shut down and turn on plants repeatedly. So they just keep running the plants. So you end up in a scenario where module manufacturers will sell at or below cost just to keep the wheels turning and then hopefully make the money back. So is it plausible that we're going to see the same thing with batteries, that the scale will come? We know that the mid to long-term demand for batteries is huge, so the long-term pricing of lithium should be secure, but are we going to see those same forces at play where you end up with so much scale that it really forces the price down?
Yeah. No doubt. And I stumbled across a video online this week from Cattle. I don't know if you guys follow the Fully Charged guys, but the Fully Charged guys took them 2 years to get into their factory, apparently, but they did a great little video and showed the processes and the automation on that Cattle factory. And Cattle are one of the biggest lithium battery producers in the world now. And the tech in that factory was mind-blowing. And, so that's just the start, right? So, yeah. Fascinating.
I love Fully Charged. And it's Robert Llewellyn, the guy who drives that, was Crichton from Red Dwarf.
That's right.
Watch that. So I can't unsee that.
Speaking of EVs and such, I see that the Yanks have come up with a way of putting out EV car fires. It's just we can put a blanket over the top and smother it.
Really?
So, yeah, it's not that hard, right? At the end of the day, take away the air, then it'll go out eventually. So it's just a fire blanket that they put over the top. And if there's an EV's caught fire in someone's garage or whatever, they
smother it.
Wrap it up in a blanket, and they follow the tow truck to the scrapyard. They leave the blanket on it, come back a couple of days later to get their blanket back.
I thought that lithium fires didn't need oxygen, and that was one of the big challenges with them.
All fires need oxygen. Whether they're capable of generating their own oxygen whilst in the process of decomposition is a possibility, but all fires need oxygen.
Of course, it'll burn hot. Maybe it's just that it burns much, much more ferociously if it's free of oxygen. My wife was actually bringing that up today, saying something came up about an EV fire locally, and she said, "Do we need to worry about that bloody Harley Davidson of yours in the shed? What are we going to do?" And I went, "No, it's fine." And then I thought, well, what would happen if it went up? I'd just walk away and let the shed burn down. But maybe I need a blanket.
Ultimately, I think that the correct answer is that you should have a smoke alarm in your garage. Is probably not a bad idea.
First thing I did.
Personally, I think that the electric car fires that we are going to see are going to be because people are plugging in their car to a 3-pin outlet, which is a massive mistake. We need proper EVSEs in people's garages that are on their own circuits and all the rest of it. Pulling 10 amps through a 10 amp power point for 15 hours to charge your car is a really dumb idea. Well, 30 hours to charge your car is a dumb idea.
Now, one of the other topics, Nigel, that we discussed earlier on was around Queensland and what's going on there.
Oh, classic Queensland, classic ergon, classic bloody stupid shit fight going on up there. So, Look, I mean, Queensland's always motivated really well by when they release laws and legislation. And this stuff isn't new, as a number of people have highlighted. A lot of this legislation changed actually in the last year or two, and it's not new, but it's kind of starting to bed in, and Energex and Ergon are really starting to push it now. There are two things that have really come up here. One is the fact that if you want to put any decent-sized EV chargers, you now have to put them onto dynamic load control, allow the networks to be able to switch them on or off. Seems reasonable. There's a cost, there's a hassle, there's, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to charge them at high rates and really, being able to belt them, you got to get on the dynamic control bandwagon. And that is a pain, but doesn't seem unreasonable to me. We probably don't need it today, but we're going to need it in 1 or 2 years.
If it was my network, so I got stuck into that chat on the Cutters thread as well, and someone highlighted that 90% of the Queensland grid consumers are on single phase, and you've only got 30% penetration of PV in most states. So that means that there's 70% of Queenslanders have still got a spinning disc meter, which I'd be concerned as well if people were putting EV chargers on with a spinning disc meter, because there's no motivation whatsoever. They're not billed peak and off peak. And if you do come home and you've got a spinning disc meter, then you go, well, it doesn't matter when I get charged the car, so I'll just charge the car.
Yeah. And apparently it's an issue for meter readers too.
Well, it is. And this was the other issue. And I have to throw a big shout out actually to the guys at Arcana, because they raised this with me. They've stumbled across it. And, they were highlighting that tragically a meter reader was killed in a dog attack about 18 months ago. Went onto a property, American bloody pit bulls, irresponsible owners, and lo and behold, a poor bloody meter reader was torn to pieces, and an absolute tragedy. But as a consequence, what's happened is there is now legislation in place that says, look, if you have an unfenced area where a dog is present and you want to do anything to that switchboard, i.e. add a solar system, then you may well be required to tell the owner that they have to upgrade the switchboard and move it to the boundary of the property, which we know is going to cost $2,000 or $3,000. That is bloody insane, especially given the fact that as soon as you throw solar on, you're forced to put a smart meter on, which is a good thing. And as soon as you put a smart meter on, meter reader doesn't need to go there anymore because it's now remotely read. So it's a classic bit of Queensland kind of
we don't even have to read them anymore, right? So
that's right. It's a classic bit of sledgehammer reactive approach. Now, I'm really vexed on this issue because I really feel that safety is important, and I really feel for the family of anyone who's been, especially the guy who was killed, and anyone who's been attacked by a dog on a property. It is not something that shouldn't be taken lightly, that's for sure. But yet again, we see Queensland legislators throwing the sledgehammer at solar to solve their problems. And there are other ways to solve this. So, it's a bit disappointing. And I'm hoping that there's going to be some sensibility put around this issue, especially given that as soon as you put a smart meter that's remotely read on there, problem's gone.
Well, in 2006, that's what the Vic government did. And they copped all criticism for gold plating the grid. And I'm curious to know what the cost of paying meter readers and all of the rest of the money that needs to be thrown at that would have cost between 2006 and now. So it's actually very short-sighted to maintain what they're doing rather than to go to a smart meter solution.
Well, it is. And we already know that in Queensland, as soon as you put solar on, you are going to pay a metering charge of about 5 cents to pay for the cost of that meter. It is mandatory. You are going to get a smart meter. It is going to be installed unless you're a sovereign citizen. And you're going to pay for the cost of that meter over the life of your tenancy or your ownership. That's the way the legislation works, which is a great solution because you get a remote smart digital meter installed and you pay for it over time. It's a great idea.
We're our own worst enemy here, right? So people in Queensland have put single-phase inverters on three-phase houses, which has never been allowed in WA, and it's a bad idea. We should, if a house has got three-phase, should have a three-phase inverter. Similarly, what's also a bad idea is people aren't paying attention to the boards that they're installing these bigger systems. So now we've got 10 kilowatt single phase inverters that are relatively becoming common. So all of a sudden we're connecting 44 amps of supply to the 63 amps that they've got from the street. And then there's a case on Crap Solar where someone's got 2 Powerwalls, I've got another 44 amps there. So I've got 150 amp supply connected to an 80 amp board, and I scratch my head and I go, why did that melt? Well, it melted because it was never designed for that in the first place. And there was also a bit of talk about apprentices and apprentices not being recognised who work for solar companies. That's completely nuts. We're in the industry of rewiring the whole nation here. We're not just bolting together solar panels. We're rebuilding their switchboards from scratch. This is more complicated, and it takes more expertise than it ever has to just build a house in the past. So there's a lot of hurdles that we need to, and a lot of barriers to break down.
And now today we're joined by a special guest from Perth as well. And we actually had lunch today, which was really nice. We've got Derek McKercher from Perth Solar Warehouse. I've just noticed all over the place, Derek pops up, winning awards, interacting, going to conferences. So thought it'd be a great guest. Welcome to the podcast, Derek.
Yeah, thank you for having me, gentlemen. It's good to be here.
Now, did you get much of a break, or have you worked through?
Look, I have a tendency to work through a little bit. I love a little bit of balance, though. So I get a little bit of beach during the day, and then I go back and do a little bit more work. And I love that time because it's the time that I get to work uninterrupted from all the daily noise, and I get really good flow with creativity and getting on top of all the things that sort of might have had shelved throughout the year, and just make great things happen. In saying that, a little bit contrast to what you guys were saying was I love getting back into the flow. So I get a little bit excited when Monday swings around, right? It's almost a weekly thing because all of a sudden the wheels are turning again, and everyone's sort of occupied, and from a business owner's perspective, cash flow returns. And it's a great feeling to just have the ship back in motion.
Now, you've got a really interesting business model, and we'll probably get into that a bit further on. But normally we start with a brief of how you got into the industry and what your journey has looked like. Do you want to just share from the start?
Look, I guess I came into the industry as an electrical contractor, and then evolving into energy efficiency and solar as things grew. And probably what spurred me to take it on myself was I saw that there was a way to do things better or differently. That was really important to me in business because I think it's a good principle because there's already a lot of businesses out there already. So how do you disrupt it or have a positive impact? When we were subcontracting to a lot of companies, there was a lot of complaints that you'd just listen to, the different aspects of frustration. And so I worked out a way that we could improve deficiencies that were existing in current models and improve efficiency along the way.
What sort of differences are you talking about compared to, the companies that were around there?
Yeah, what's your secret, Derek? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, digitalization is my secret.
Nice.
I saw that there was a lot of human error that was occurring and ways that we could look to mitigate that effect. If you didn't have the right process, it was very easy for things to get misinterpreted or issues to arise. And so if we created a more systemized format, and at the roundabout the time the cloud was just coming into emergence, CRMs were becoming a big thing. And I realized that if we had a set nominated amount of procedures and tasks that would just allow the entire machine to just keep moving with minimal interruptions, it would actually deliver the results to the customers that they were genuinely impressed with compared to other type of trade services, especially when you've got a sequence like solar where you've got applications and all those sort of things. And it seemed like a privilege that was only open to bigger businesses that could afford an IT expert to come in and do this. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I reckon I could work that out. And so I just started tinkering with different softwares and the like to remove an exorbitant expense so that we could then take it into a small business type of scenario and then slowly just start to multiply that. Nothing's perfect from the start. So you take customer feedback, you take even software deficiencies and you learn from those boundaries, and then you consistently look to improve.
It's such an interesting topic because operational efficiency, when margins are so slim, operational efficiency is the only real place left to enhance your margins. Or to find a competitive advantage, right? I've been chatting to so many people for so many years. You and I were talking about this the other day, Luke, about process and systems. And, and the interesting thing is that as solar and our electrification journey gets more complex, process systems, digitization and data all become so critical. And, finding ways to speed up those loops of feedback and, keep those processes and systems developing and evolving all the time. Really, really critical stuff. So good on you, mate.
That comes down to quality, right? You can't produce consistent anything unless you have a mapped out procedure for it. So in working towards a quality system, so like ISO 9001, basically says that you need a procedure for everything and you need to do everything as per the procedure, and then you get a tick in the box. But people usually evolve into a quality system of sorts with procedures simply to lower the number of, as you said, lower the number of defects, Derek. If we know what we're going to do, then if we lay that out so that we can give that job to should be able to give it to someone off the street, you should be able to read the procedure or whatever and do it. And that also gives your business an excellent layer of redundancy in that if someone's not there or gets hit by a bus, you're still capable of doing it because you've got that process already nutted out and someone else can follow it.
Well, that's correct. For example, within our system is that if a task is not being fulfilled within a nominated period of time, we can then elect to another internal staff member to take on that load. And what should happen for the end user or the customer is that they shouldn't experience any of the mishaps that might occur or the day-to-day runnings of the business. That's our issue, is to take that responsibility and to give them a seamless process. With that, what we do try to also do is provide them with layers of information or segmented information as they progress throughout, so it answers questions as they go along.
Yeah, and it's tricky in WA when a 3-phase upgrade takes 12 months, Luke.
Yeah, can do. Thanks, Western Power. On that note, I note that the Smart Energy Council's just engaged Wilf Johnston, formerly the national boss of M-Phase, as the general manager for WA.
Yeah, so that's a good pickup, isn't it? Wilf's a great guy.
Pickup. He's a great guy, and he's motivated to help get some changes around some of that stuff. So that's going to be really good to watch. Also note, Derek, you mentioned about the cloud. Now, these days, of course, the cloud, everyone's using cloud platforms, but really going back even 10, 15 years, it was a bit like internet banking. When it first came online, people were suspicious, worried about security and so forth. So a lot of companies didn't adopt it until it became mainstream, but you were back there jumping on the cloud.
And so we're almost one step ahead of the whole COVID thing a little bit. So when that came around, we're already prepared for it.
It's interesting that we talk about, Luke and I have always talked about working off the back of the boat. There's no reason why we can't do that anywhere in the world. And one of the other people that we had on the podcast is Matt Wright. And he called me yesterday, and you can't tell the difference where he's working from. He's working in Vietnam at the moment, where his wife's family is. So it's absolutely doable. Can't tell the difference. No lag in the phone calls whatsoever. Just 100% spot on. It's fantastic that we live in a world where we can do that.
You've got to be driven, though. I think there's a lot of people that their minds might wander a little bit when they're in an alternative environment. So there's a little bit for both people. I know that I don't have enough time to do everything that I want in a single day. And so I'm always going to be where I'm looking for a connection just so I can basically keep working or keep implementing. So I love an aeroplane with Wi-Fi.
Really? I actually, even when they have Wi-Fi, often I won't connect to it and I'll intentionally be disconnected.
Put on a movie and a champagne.
Ultimately, you get to the point where you're so busy that if you're disconnected for 2 days, you come back to such a huge volume of work that you're buggered for a couple of weeks.
And that's where you start prioritizing different trips. And I'm looking at the schedule for the year ahead, and there's some that I just have to cut out of there because I can't do back-to-back trips anymore. It has to be, you can't even go for anything longer than 7 days half the time, or 5 days, or a work week, because it's just it's too much time away, and if you're not consistently on the ball and you're not consistently motivated to keep improving, then, it doesn't take long for someone else to come around and overtake you. And that's what drives us, though, isn't it?
Just changing tack here, Derek. Tell us about your demographic and your approach to market and how you found success there.
Yeah, well, I guess that's probably quite interesting. It took a little bit of time to accurately identify where we existed in the market, and it is the internet where I exist. And once you realize where you exist, you get a better understanding of the customer and how they're shopping for your product and for your service and what they particularly want from it. So I just looked at the way that I would shop for any particular product or service, and then I would look at different responses that I might get from, if I was doing something for my house, from a concreting contractor was one, and I got bombarded with all this information in one email. And I thought, I'm never reading that. I don't have enough time to barely read the emails that I've got in my inbox. So why would I send, as my introductory email out to a customer, a proposal asking them to marry me on the first date? You just don't do it, right? You've got to use a little bit of digitalization and tact in order to appeal to the people, because they've also got short time. You just have to think, if you're searching for something on the internet, you might just be generally inquiring, but you don't necessarily want to open up a whole can of worms straight away. And so everyone's on their own different timeline of making a buying decision. We want everybody to be buying straight away, but that's just not how the world works. All I do is give people a more detailed product overview of what they're particularly buying, because we do see that people are now buying cars online. They're buying lots of different things in different ways, and you can showcase it by being comprehensive online, because I think that people, that they are looking for a level of detail when they are browsing. In the past, we used to just put up a page, but now we just have to have different layers for all the different people that are coming through. Some you're going to have an engineer. Some you're going to have just someone that just wants an answer. I just want a price. And not everybody is the same. And so the user experience has to be broad and open to everybody. And that's how you kind of build trust, because that's what we're doing in sales, right? We're building trust, and we can do it in different ways. Some people do it face-to-face. Some people like a layer in front of them. If you're a customer, you might like to browse your options, see what's out there. And then maybe in 3 months' time, you might want to be in more of a purchasing decision. Now, it's not probably out of the sales handbook, but I said to you before, I'm just an electrician. So
yeah, but mate, you can get away with that maybe 10 years ago, but by this point, you're probably a bit more than an electrician.
If I could give any advice around that, is just how would you be comfortable in buying something? And so it's not necessarily unique to what our business does. If anybody is already looking at our business and what we're doing, well, you're already behind, and you should be looking forward and ahead and at the next thing. So if I do look at a competitor, I don't know, it wouldn't be to seek inspiration, because I can already tell you, if you're looking at us today, you're already in the past, right? Because it's a little bit like the sunset on the horizon. The sun, as it sets, it's actually already set, right? 5 minutes ago, because of the atmosphere and everything like that. And I think that was on Dr. Karl yesterday. It's exactly the same principle, because I'm already moving forward. I've already got new pages that are coming out and new designs that are coming out. And that's because I'm listening to the customer and listening to what they want. Whether that's in a false phone number that they might leave, that's because they're tired of leaving their phone numbers with companies and they just hound them. So you have to have another way of cutting through the noise and building trust. And if that's time, then and fortunately, a lot of electricians have the ability to build that trust quite easily, because they're honest and they're technically astute and can usually give a good overview that's quite relatable to a lot of homeowners.
It's pretty interesting watching the way my 19-year-old buys anything. It's like, if it's not available online, he's not buying it. If he can't order it, he's not buying it. Right. So there's a whole nother generation about to plop on us in the next 5 or 10 years, right? Who are going to have a whole, as you say, you you got to be thinking one step ahead, because by the time someone looks at your website, you're already thinking about what the next customer's thinking and how they're behaving and all those kinds of things. And then we've got all these generational changes as well.
Exactly.
I only realised literally a couple of days ago that my job doing what I'm doing is not a sales job. Obviously, I'm a sales guy and I sell heat pumps, but I have to educate people into all of the things that they need to do. So it's actually them that has to do the selling. I've just got to educate them with all the stuff that they need in order to be able to make that sale with the customer. So my role isn't a sales guy anymore. It's actually someone that provides training. We went through this sort of 14, 15 years ago at the start of solar. We needed to educate people then, but because
to convince them it works, then
we've been doing it so long now, it turns into more of a sales role, in that we're just providing a service for whatever. I hear that in your mode of discussion there, Derek. That's the same thing. We're constantly having to evolve into something new all the time.
That's true, or else could be left behind, because I did that once too, and I sat idle for a fraction too long. If you think you've made it and you think you've basically reached the top of the mountain, but you just have to look a little bit further, and the mountain, there's a bigger mountain just over there that we have to set our sights on, because it doesn't take long for someone else to meet you up there and then soon overtake you. So I think a level of agility, especially in the digital space, if you're agile and you're able to pivot quite quickly and to look at new directions, because even this whole solar space that we're in now, or let's say sustainable energy more broadly, I would relate it similar to where the internet was in 1995. In broader energy, we're going to have lots of segments of specialists. There's a lot of opportunity out there for everybody.
We need to be good enough at everything rather than masters at one. Anytime you're a master at one and something does change and you can't pivot fast enough, then you're gone. And having a broad range of tools in the toolbox to be able to do different things is advantageous. And of course, the solar industry's figured that out pretty quickly, that we don't call it the solar coaster for no reason. And now we've got EV chargers and air conditioners and induction cooktops and all of this other stuff that we've got to go out there and do. And do we go out there and do everything? There are definitely solar businesses who have ratcheted up their average sale price. So, if we're competing in the 6.6 kilowatt space, we've got to try and somehow put a 6.6 kilowatt system on someone's roof for $3,000. That's the challenge, or whatever the number might be. Whereas if we're going there and we're selling them a battery, an EV charger, an induction cooktop, a heat pump, 5 air conditioners, all of a sudden we're going in there and we're selling $50,000, $60,000. I had a customer tell me last week that they'd done $100,000 electrification upgrade for one client. You're just like, shit,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of kahunas,
Unreal.
And that's a whole lot different to the solar installer market that we used to be, which is great. That's what I
really like that, though, because I think that's exactly where you've got to have a broader vision. And even in your basic solar system is have a view as a return sale. So have a really good impression on the customer, because a lot of people can't afford it, that $100,000 straight up. But
I'm going to be your person for the next 10 years. So we definitely covered this on another podcast.
Oh, did you?
This is step 1. This is step 2. This is step 3. I appreciate that we can't do them all at once. I'm going to be your guy for the next 10 years. So I need to do a good job so that you want me to come back.
100%. In our process, in our CRM, and going back to that topic, the installation is only the center part of the process. It's the middle part. It's not the end. And everything, we now have another component that we have to fulfill to make sure that customer satisfaction is number one. And the more customer-centric we are moving forward, especially with the way that people are becoming more and more happy to do their research online, we need to be customer-centric businesses. And it sounds obvious, right? But it was easy to sweep people under the rug in the past and keep them silent. But
this is one for Nigel. In God we trust. Everyone else bring data, right?
That's it.
So, Derek, we usually get into this with our podcast guests, which is what do you do for your de-stressing and downtime, and how do you manage that other challenge of your family and such?
Mine is mainly spent at the beach. I love the beach, and I think that you need a good balance of nature and work. So usually I'll go for a walk along the beach because it allows me to churn things over in my mind a little bit, but I don't tend to dwell on things too much. Fresh air helps, and if I do, I get out for a kite surf as well. But that's also a bit of a time sink. So if I've got 3 hours in the afternoon, then I'll definitely make it. But definitely the beach is my go-to part of nature. Even if it's just an hour out of the day, straight after work, go home, go for a walk on the beach, come back, and then maybe even get into a little bit more work. But it's definitely a different train of thought after, and it's something I never used to do. And I put on quite a good amount of weight, and probably I noticed that my thought process cleared up a lot better once I started doing lots of little things. And so one of the other things that I'll do during the day, because I started to develop a lower back problem, and that was through just too much sitting and working on the computer all the time. So in the middle of the day, I worked out that I could afford a half an hour gym session, which is just down the road. Other guys that I know would go to the gym for an hour and a half. An hour and a half was too long for me, but half an hour, and if I approached a PT and sort of did resistance training, high repetition, not too heavy weights, efficiency in the gym type of scenario. And
turns out I know a guy that knows a lot about gyms. That'd be you.
Really?
Yeah, so I take a similar approach to the gym. So I'll be in and out within 40, 45 minutes, but it's about being very intentional about it. So having shorter breaks between sets. I chat here and there, but don't get bogged down in chats. Don't muck around on the phone. I get up at 5 most mornings, go to the gym, and it's all about efficiency, as you said, in and out. So someone might be there for an hour and a half and they've done the same amount of exercises, but I'm not there for that. I'm not there to socialise. I'm there to get the job done, get to the office and push on with the day. So I relate to that completely. But I agree with what you said. I mean, it's the little things that you do. That's what you can fit in. Whether it's fitness, whether it's diet, they build it up to be such a big thing that they must implement the whole lot in one step. And it becomes something that's not really manageable and it's not sustainable. So if you can do half an hour in the gym, that's fantastic because frequency is more important than just hitting it really hard and smashing yourself and killing your motivation. Little bits frequently is much more powerful than that. That's my bit of advice, but sounds like we're aligned there, Derek.
Absolutely. Well, I found that it works. And if it works, then I'm happy with that. But everyone finds what works for them individually.
How do you find the kite surfing? Is that an injury-prone sort of sport? I mean, it seems dangerous.
No, I think it is depending on what you make of it. You could say the same thing to Nigel and riding on motorbikes. You know, if you were trying to do backflips, then it becomes a bit more dangerous. But if you're just driving down the road, it's not too bad. And kite surfing is, if you're in a good group and you're not doing anything too aggressive, there's people that are 75 out there doing it, and it's good core activity. And you can just go just side to side, get a little bit of air, and that's all I do is just try to get as much air as possible. But there's other people that want to do kite loops and all sorts of funky things, and I'm not competing in Red Bull. So I don't need to do that. And once you realise what you're doing something for, and for me it is just being, there's something about being propelled along by nature and that force, that power that you get, and that fresh air injection, and you're forced to suck in more, and then you get hit by some water, but that's fresh, and you feel alive at the end of it. And I think there's something special about that sort of sport.
For someone that was listening to the podcast that thought, oh, yeah, that's a good idea, I might get into kite surfing. What does it cost to set yourself up, and how much wind do you need?
Oh, okay, yeah. So, look, your average kit, brand new, I don't know, you're probably looking around about $5,000. But, you've got training that you probably want to do.
That's a shitload of dough, mate. That's a hell of a...
No. Well, look...
That's a cheap hobby, Karl. That's a cheap hobby.
It's cheaper than electric Harleys, sure.
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, what is a kite? It's about $2,500 brand new, bar lines, board, and about, probably a bit more now, to be honest. But you can do it for less. You can do it for probably $2,000 secondhand gear and work out whether you like it. But there's no ongoing costs with it. There's no fuel into anything, or there's no hiring of anything else once you've got it. So
I'll have to trade in my $10,000 electric bike.
Now, we're going to wrap up in a sec. I thought I might whip around and see if there's any last questions or comments. We'll go to Nigel first.
Yeah, I'm actually going to throw it out there to my family today because number one daughter's about to drop another child, which is an outstanding accomplishment. Grandchild number 2 for me. She's one of the most wonderful humans on the planet, and I just love her dearly. And she's turning into the most wonderful, wonderful mum, and has got a great partner and a growing family. So good job, Charlotte. Son number 2, he's about to go to uni. He's gone to head off and do a degree, which is an awesome accomplishment. He's been working in his chosen profession and for the last year or so since he left school, and has really, really got some amazing talent in digital art. So good on you, Mel. And son number 3, he's just finished his very first week in the real world as a plumber. He decided school wasn't for me. I want to be out in the workforce. I want to be on the tools. And we actually gave him a beer this afternoon and sat him outside and said, "Tell us about your first week on the job, mate." And so good. He's in the real world. He's doing what he wants to do. So my wrap up for the week is I'm a lucky dad.
Fantastic.
Sounds like he should be installing heat pumps. Nigel.
Oh gosh, give him a couple more weeks before you do the Karl introduction.
Mate, I just want an outdoor shower first, right? Just one step at a time.
And Karl, any comments?
No, apart from the revelation that my job is actually as a trainer and an educator, not necessarily as a salesperson. It was my revelation for the first week back, and it turns out that I enjoy doing that quite a lot. And the industry is really moving quite quickly here in that we're moving towards this genuine electrification that for most people hasn't happened before. So lots of changes. It's awesome.
Derek McKercher from Perth Solar Warehouse, thanks again for coming on the podcast, mate. It's been a really good chat. Do you have any last comments or shout-outs you want to give?
To be honest, I want to thank you guys, because what you're doing with a podcast is a level of knowledge sharing that the world needs more of. And you're diving into and exploring the minds of different people from different aspects of the industry. And I love that it's done locally in Australia, that is. So we're not just fed only with American stuff or anything like that. Sorry to anyone in America that's listening, but it's great to have local content.
If we could be somewhere else, we would be.
There's just a lot of it, and there's a lot of intelligence out there that we can bring to the forefront and the industry. It doesn't have to be proprietary all the time, and we can get it out there and we can make more rapid improvements and progress as an industry together. So awesome. Thank you to you three for being proactive on the podcast scene.
Good on you, mate.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it, mate. Thanks again for coming on. And Karl and Nigel, we'll catch you in the next episode. We're going to have a ripper guest. Thanks for listening, and please remember to subscribe, share it around, and we'll catch you next time.